to Deep Dives with Dogs. Well, today's video is talking about the sinking of the Lusitania and kind of what it means for United States-German relations before the first, or well, during the First World War. For those that are not aware, Lusitania is sunk May 7th, 1915. It is a British passenger ship. It's carrying about a little over 100 Americans when it is sunk. The Germans sink it with a submarine. They claim that, hey, it was fully justified. We gave them a warning. They were well within their rights, and the Lusitania was carrying munitions. Now we do know this now, but back then obviously it wasn't fully guaranteed. But they did. They were carrying munitions, and of course many ships would have done this because it's, hey, well, they're not going to attack civilian ships because who knows who you might piss off, and so we're going to hide munitions in them. It's a pretty common idea. But this does spark quite the diplomatic controversy for Germany because it really kind of pisses off a lot of Americans. Americans, for all of our things, at least one thing we do care about is if you attack fellow Americans. And this is one of those examples where, realistically, if the Germans had played their cards right, they could have had the United States maybe not join the war on their side. I don't know if that would necessarily have ever happened, but at least never join the Entente, which does have some big implications for later in the war. And the United States was providing munitions to both sides at one point in the war. The British blockade and say, hey, you're not allowed to do that, and America kind of acquiesces. But once again, if Germany had played their cards right, they could have had the Americans stand up against the British blockade. The Brits at this point would not have wanted to piss off the United States for many reasons. A lot of supplies are coming in from the United States, things like that. If the United States puts its foot down, Britain really doesn't have a leg to stand on at that point. But with things like unrestricted submarine warfare and the sinking of the Lusitania, it really turns American sentiment against the Germans, and it really plays into those in the American government that really wanted to go against the Germans. It really plays into that, which there's a lot of that idea. People were more willing to join the Brits and things like that, mainly Woodrow Wilson. But there's a lot of German Americans. German Americans even now are a very high percentage of the population, and back then even more so, in the sense of these German Americans were maybe the children of or Germans that moved to the United States. And there's a good chance they would be willing to go to bat for Germany. It could have changed the war, but you have things like the Lusitania. And Lusitania, while the Germans were within their rights, it's actually a good example of, even if you know what you're doing is technically right, you have to do things sometimes for those who do not understand. Because while, yes, the Germans understood that they were doing what was in the right, and they were, in a lot of ways, doing what was within their rights, public sentiment is very much against the killing of civilians. So while, yes, it was within their rights, it wasn't within their accepted rights, you could say. Kind of confusing, I know, but a lot of times you have to do that. Because people aren't necessarily looking at it from all sides. They don't know everything. And while we know now, yes, the Lusitania had munitions on it, and obviously many people knew then, a lot more people did not know that it was carrying munitions when it was technically not allowed to. Like, that's the other thing. The Lusitania was not supposed to be carrying munitions. That was an agreed upon thing, but it still was. So, yeah, this whole event and subsequent events are really a showing of the Germans' failing in the PR department, they had a lot of chances to win over the United States. The United States was more kind of on Germany's side at one point. But as things go on and more things happen, Americans get more and more upset with Germany. And it leads to eventually with the Zimmerman telegram where the Germans say, "Hey, to Mexico, we'll give you back land in Mexico if you help us if the United States wins the war." They could have even turned around. They even said they sent it. They didn't have to say that. They could have lied. That's the thing. Because it's really easy to lie and actually turn it on the British. But they didn't do that. They acquiesce. It's a lot of German PR failings. But I guess it was how it had to be, right? And while the Lusitania doesn't lead the United States into the war right away, it does lead American sentiment to being okay with the war. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways you can improve these videos, leave a comment down below. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Thank you.